For today's review, we take a little trip across the pond. Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and today I am taking a look at the 2015 miniseries, The Enfield Haunting. Typically I don't do miniseries on this channel. Typically I try to stick to movies only. However, I really wanted to watch this one, and grand total, it was only 3 episodes that total clocks in at about 2 hours and 15 minutes long, and also it aired on Sky Living in the UK, which basically means that, swearing and so forth were intact. It has less sensory regulation kind of standards than something that would show on ABC or CBS here in the States. So I felt a little bit more comfortable reviewing this one here. And I'm fascinated, honestly, by a lot of these haunting stories. If the name Enfield sounds familiar, you might recall that this was the setting and the storyline that took place within the second Conjuring movie, when Ed and Lorraine Warren went to London and went to Enfield in North London to investigate the Enfield poltergeist. And this is the same kind of backstory. This is a historically documented thing that happened in real life, where Ed and Lorraine Warren in real life did go there and did investigate and so on and so forth. But this doesn't have to do with Ed and Lorraine. It actually doesn't have them at all in this miniseries. This instead focuses on 2 other investigators that were present during the time of the Enfield situation that was going on between 1977 and 1979. The lead investigator for the Society of Psychical Research, Maurice Grosse, did go and visit and did kind of form a bond with one of the girls there in particular. But it just had the kind of a bit of a paternal feel to it, and was invested in their story. And he brought in another investigator, Guy Playfair, that was also kind of got enthralled with the storyline. And this miniseries, if I say movie, it's just, I'm used to saying movie, but this miniseries follows them primarily as they document what's going on in the house with the girls and so on. So it follows a lot of the same beats and same story paths as The Conjuring 2, while having nothing at all to do with the Warrens. So I admit to being a bit enthralled by some of the investigations that the Warrens went on, and some of the more modern day haunting situations that have been documented and are now kind of being dissected, taking the family's accounts at face value, expanding on them, extrapolating them, putting them through the Hollywood machine, and putting them out into the theaters for the quality scares. I'm on board with it. I like it. I've always been fascinated by these stories. And I think that the film adaptations of the Warren characters are very good. I love them, and I'm on board with them. What I think of them personally in real life, their real life counterparts, that's a different matter, and a matter for a different time. Let's just say that it's less favorable. But taking the Warren's investigations of like the Enfield poltergeist, and the Smurl family in Pennsylvania, which they haven't, they did a miniseries on back in the 80s or 90s, but they haven't done a movie on yet, and I'm really waiting for them to do that. But all of these things really fascinated me, so I was immediately drawn to want to watch the Enfield Haunting miniseries here. And what I really found about it was that it did not really work that well as a horror movie, but as a character-based dramatic film, I do think that it worked really well, and there's one particular reason for that, and that reason's name is Timothy Spall. Timothy Spall, who you might remember from the Harry Potter movies as Wormtail, plays the main investigator here of Maurice Grosse. And although this miniseries to me didn't have a whole lot of scare moments, I think there were 1 or 2 that actually kind of did give me a little bit of a jump. But for the most part, kind of fell flat. But Timothy Spall delivered a fantastic, amazing performance in this movie. And I was really, really sold by it. And it really carried the entirety of the rest of the film. There were elements of this that I really wish they had done differently. I keep going back to The Conjuring 2, but it's kind of impossible to talk about the Enfield poltergeist without talking about two major pieces of cinematic fiction that is based on it that came out within a year of each other. But one thing that The Conjuring 2 did that I liked was have an air of doubt. Because one thing that really did happen is the two Hodgson girls that were a part of the Enfield poltergeist taunting situation, they did show during the investigation that they were in fact setting some of this up. Broomsticks on there and bending the spoons off camera, or taking a camera that was timed to go off every 5 seconds or so, and instead of having a full, video camera showing a levitation, instead it just showed one frame of this camera that took timed pictures, and, she was a gymnast bouncing off the bed at just the right time kind of thing. So there was documented proof in the actual Enfield case that they were making stuff up, and they even admitted to it. And the Martin Gross and Guy Playfair investigators had been so invested in this that they tried to get them to recant their confession. And all of this is documented in the miniseries here. But where The Conjuring 2 allowed for a measure of doubt, at the very least between different characters, one character would be convinced and another character would have, doubts. And it led for some conflict there that I do wish had been fleshed out a little bit more, but I was happy that it was there in the first place. And in this, it's not. There is no doubt. Maurice and Guy, they see things that are impossible, and they see it with their own eyes right there in front of them before the whole confession thing came out. Stuff that even the confession could not possibly explain. So they were still, throughout this miniseries, perfectly on board with the fact that something really is going on, and there was no conflict about the credibility of the girl's testimony. So I think that was a bit of a missed opportunity. And that's not really spoilers. That actually just kind of goes on throughout the first, 1 or 2 acts of the entire thing. And what I will say is that we find ourselves in a situation throughout this miniseries of it dragging a fair bit, because we're constantly going back and forth between the girls are lying, the girls are telling the truth, the girls are lying, the girls are telling the truth. They are telling the press one thing, they are telling each other behind closed doors another. And throughout it, whereas that might be interesting to follow in a situation where we, the audience, are still unsure of things, we, the audience, instead are sure of things because we are following the Maurice Grosse character as our protagonist who has witnessed this stuff. So instead, we basically have these girls that are, instead of having a conflict that allows for questioning things, we instead have annoying side characters that are damaging the reputations of our protagonists that we have already latched onto. So, again, as a horror film, it really didn't work that well. There was no real surprises, there was no real suspense, and there certainly weren't a whole lot of scares. But just following the Maurice character and getting on board with the level of emotion and gravitas that Timothy Spall brought to the character, as well as the paternal latching onto of the Janet character in particular, as we go through this journey, was really well done. So I'm going to go and throw up all the scores here. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And in direct contrast to a movie like Dude Bro Party Massacre 3, where everything was just absolutely blah about it, except for the intent, because it was supposed to be that way and it was fun. This one was well done all across the board, except for what it was trying to do, what it was intending to do, so that is the low mark here. But it was acted well. The plot, I thought, was okay. It was well done as a character study, but as a mystery, as a horror film, not quite so much. There was missed opportunity after missed opportunity, and a lot of it just came down to adjusting perspective. If it had done just 1 or 2 things a little bit differently, a little bit tweaked, then the audience would have been in for an entirely different experience. But instead, we witnessed what Maurice did. We were following his lead on this, and there were conflicts that simply weren't there. So, all told, all together, would I really recommend this movie, or this miniseries, as it were? I would say if you're looking for a wild, scary thrill ride, absolutely not, pass it by. But if you are in the mood for a decently creepy enough film that has very good characters and a nice bit of drama to it, if you're just kind of in the mood for a little bit of a downbeat, a slow burn, that will basically not really deliver on the haunting bits, but still very much deliver on breaking your heart with interesting characters, then yes, on that note, I do recommend The Enfield Haunting. But on all other notes, as far as a horror movie goes, I really can't. So take that for what you will, but that should about do it. That's my review of 2015's Sky Living miniseries, The Enfield Haunting. I really thank you for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe, and if you want to support me further, my Patreon link is below. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.